You wake before the sun and feel the familiar tug of urgency. Deadlines, messages. The quiet ache of expectations, and you wonder if a different beginning is possible. In the hush of first light, when the breeze brushes curtains and birds offer their early hymn, you receive a sacred invitation. Come to the refuge, to the one whose presence steadies your gentle awakening, restores your purpose, and teaches you to release what strains your chest. God remains your strong tower and your strength, guiding your steps with a steady rhythm so you can shape this morning into an offering rather than a performance. The aim of this moment is simple. Lay aside worry, surrender today's plans, listen for His voice, and let Him renew and guide you. So Matthew 11:28-29, you come carrying weight, and He welcomes you into rest. You trade pressure for a yoke that fits your frame and mission. You discover direction that is kind to your soul. What care do you entrust to Him now? What good desire will you place into His hands? Now, as your heart grows still, we step into gentle awakening. Purpose remembered, burden released, strength for steps, a steady pace, and the offering of your day. You open your eyes to daybreak like a shoreline receiving tide. No rush, only the quiet arrival of what already belongs to you: breath, presence, and the nearness of God. You linger on the pillow and notice the room's soft grey, the window faintly aglow, the low chorus of birds learning the morning. You let your chest rise and fall, counting a few slow cycles, letting each exhale loosen the last knots of the night. You remind yourself that beginnings shape tone. The earliest minutes often become the mold for the hours that follow. Instead of grabbing for noise, you reach for calm intention. You whisper a single sentence that names your posture. You rise with purpose, not pressure. You let the words float above your schedule like a banner over a gate. You picture the Father watching over you with kindness, not a taskmaster at a clock, but a shepherd at dawn, calling your name with patience and wisdom. You answer with the smallest yes, and that yes opens a quiet road. You sit at the edge of the bed and let the floor steady your feet. You choose a rhythm: breathe in for 4, hold for 2, release for 6. As you breathe, you visualize putting down hurry like a heavy pack. The mental lists try to scatter your attention. You gather them and set them on a shelf where God can sort them in due time. You open your hands in a small sign of consent, asking for grace to move kindly through rooms, travel meetings, and conversations. You practice a sentence you can carry everywhere. You are not late, you are led. You remember that the sun moves without strain and flowers open without alarms. Life in the Spirit often grows by quiet increments. The goal is not to move slowly for slowness' sake, but to move appropriately with a cadence that fits your calling. You ask for discernment between what is urgent and what is essential. You grant yourself permission to begin with attentiveness, even when others start with hurry. Psalm 143:8. You ask to hear of steadfast love in the morning because guidance begins with relationship, not performance. You let affection, not anxiety, set the compass. You align your path by goodness before you touch a calendar. You step toward light, perhaps to a chair near a window, perhaps to a small space cleared of clutter, and claim it as a little sanctuary. You listen for inner noise and, rather than fighting it, you acknowledge it and let it pass like a cloud. You choose a first action that supports alertness without agitation. Drink water, stretch your spine, open the curtains, or stand barefoot for a moment to greet the floor. You speak a quiet gratitude for specific gifts already present, oxygen in lungs. Shelter overhead, a new page to write with your choices. Gratitude does not ignore hardship. It keeps hardship from becoming your headline. You ask for the humility to begin again where yesterday frayed. You resist comparison by blessing others in your mind, colleagues, neighbors, family, and you release the need to match their pace. You practice gentleness toward your own body, toward your story, toward the tasks you will carry. Softness at dawn is not weakness, it is training for faithful endurance. Now you frame the day with a phrase that keeps you anchored. First, receive, then respond. You picture your mind as a clear pool, fed by a spring that never diminishes. From that source, you will draw words, choices, and service. You remember that Jesus often met people in morning quiet and evening stillness. Sacred work grows from communion. You ask for the courage to protect this unhurried beginning from theft by distraction. You let God set the tempo, a pace that includes focus, rest, and meaningful breaks. If tension creeps back in, you return to the breath and the banner. You rise with purpose, not pressure. You step from this small sanctuary carrying a settled center, not because demands have vanished, but because your heart has learned how to start. And starting well is itself a victory, a seed planted in fertile soil that will grow into wise choices, steady service, and quiet joy. You recall why you're here with clarity. You sit where the first amber edge of morning finds your face. And you remember that your life is not an accident of calendars, but a story held by a faithful author. You name who you are before you, consider what you do beloved, called, crafted with intention. You let this identity settle, like dew across your thoughts, until noisy demands lose their claim on your worth. You breathe and picture a compass steadied by true north. You notice how anxiety shrinks your vision to problems, while meaning stretches your gaze toward possibility. You let meaning lead. You let noise trail behind. You trace the contours of your unique assignment, not as a burden, but as a gift entrusted. You recall moments when grace flowed through you. A conversation that lifted someone, a solution that saved time, a quiet act that opened a door. You collect those memories like seashells in your palm and hear a simple message in them. You matter here. You ask for the courage to live in alignment with that reality today. You choose sincerity over spectacle, faithfulness over frenzy. You tell yourself the truth: your day is not valuable because it is crowded. It is valuable because it is aligned. As Ephesians 2:9, you are God's workmanship, shaped for good works already prepared. This tells you that purpose is not something you chase. It is something you inhabit. You walk into paths designed with love, not pressure. You now refine your focus. You speak out loud a single sentence that sums up the direction for this morning. A banner you can carry into every room. You ask, what is the most loving thing you can do first? And you listen. Perhaps it is a patient reply, a plan written with clear steps, or careful study that will bless others later. You choose one person to encourage, one task to advance, one practice to keep your inner life steady. You decide when you will pause for renewal, because rest is part of your assignment, not separate from it. You steward attention like a scarce resource. You set boundaries that protect your mission, the way hedges protect a garden. You say no to lesser urgencies so you can say a stronger yes to what is essential. You recognize that outcomes do not belong to you. Obedience does. You trade constant evaluation for steady devotion. You let the Spirit whisper where to direct effort and where to release control. You imagine laying today's results on an altar at dusk, confident that what was given in sincerity will not be wasted. You invite God to search motives so your work carries integrity, not just output. You ask to be kept from comparison, which always distorts sight. You bless those who run faster or slower because your timetable is not their map. You ask for the wisdom to do small things with wholehearted care, knowing that significance often wears simple clothes. You commit to speak truth with gentleness, to build more than you brandish, to mend more than you measure. You remember that kindness can be strategy, patience can be strength, and humility can move mountains others only try to push. You rise from this chair like a tree accepting light, rooted yet responsive, grounded yet growing. You walk into ordinary places with extraordinary quiet in your chest. You let divine love fuel your choices so that pressure finds no room to lodge. You carry a calm conviction that presence is stronger than hurry. That clarity is greater than clutter. That grace is the atmosphere in which your gifts flourish. You step forward ready to serve, ready to learn, ready to adjust, ready to offer your day as a clear note in a larger song. And you move, not driven, but directed. You set down urgency and breathe freely. You notice how strain tries to wake before you do, creeping in with the dim light, whispering that everything depends on your speed. You choose a different script. You sit where the window brightens, feel the mild breeze move the curtain, and let the morning teach you. Dew slides off leaves without effort. Birds shake rain from wings and lift into the pale sky. You inhale slowly, and on the exhale you picture putting down what you cannot carry alone. You name the tightness in your shoulders, the clenched jaw, the scattered thoughts that run like startled sparrows, and you speak to them with mercy. You are not a machine, you are a soul under care. You begin the gentle practice of release. You whisper what weighs you down, deadlines stacked like stones, conversations you replay, decisions that loom like grey clouds, the ache you have not had time to feel. You can write each one on paper or speak them into the quiet, then open your hands, palms upward, as if returning borrowed things to their true owner. You breathe in for 4 counts, hold for 2, and let a long exhale carry each load to the one who welcomes it. You do not minimize reality. You entrust it. You picture a river receiving branches and carrying them downstream out of your small inlet and into wider waters where wisdom flows. As 1 Peter 5:7, you cast care because you are cared for. You surrender weight not into emptiness, but into attentive love. You practice letting go as an act of trust, not indifference. What matters to you matters more to God. Now you turn to hidden cargo that often rides beneath urgency, guilt, that tells you you are always behind, performance that demands applause, fear of disappointing those you love. You bring these quiet burdens into light. You remember that perfectionism binds like a too tight knot. Grace loosens the cords and frees movement. You accept your human limits as gifts that point you toward partnership rather than solitary striving. You ask for discernment to see which expectations are true obligations and which are old scripts ready to be retired. You decide to speak to yourself as you would to a dear friend, kindly, clearly, without condemnation. You choose restoration over self-critique. You make release tangible. You can step outside for a minute and let the air refresh your face. You can stretch, roll your shoulders, and feel gravity return borrowed tension to the earth. You can place your hand over your heart and say, "Here and now." You are carried. You choose one burden that has shouted the loudest and set it on an inner altar with this simple sentence: "Into your hands." You trust that relinquishment is not abandonment of responsibility, it is alignment with real capacity and divine timing. You bless those involved, asking that good come to them in ways you cannot engineer. Returning to the room, you test the new lightness. You listen for the next wise action rather than every possible action. Urgency still tries to hurry you, but you respond with gentleness. Not driven, directed. You remember the banner that guards the morning. You rise with purpose, not pressure. You move from the inside out, guided by a quiet center instead of a noisy clock. The sky continues to brighten, and the birds keep singing whether you finish a list or not. You step into the day with unclenched hands, a steadier breath, and a heart that can notice beauty again. You walk lighter, because you are not carrying what was never yours to hold. You receive grace to walk calmly forward. You stand and feel ground meet your soles like a promise, solid and kind, and you ask for the quiet power to move through this day without hurry dragging your heel. You straighten your posture, roll your shoulders back, and let oxygen fill your lungs until anxious edges soften. You decide that what carries you is not adrenaline, but a deeper current. Help that steadies you, wisdom that notices, courage that acts when it is time and rests when it is good to pause. You picture your path like a lane of light across water. Ripples appear, but the way remains. The aim is not to conquer hours, but to companion them, step by thoughtful step. You tell yourself, you will do what is yours to do, and you will do it with a composed heart. You choose stability over spectacle, substance over speed, presence over performance. You begin by gathering today's tasks into clusters, not piles. You group what belongs together and bless what can wait. You choose one focal work and one supporting act, perhaps drafting a plan and then sending a needed note. And you anchor both to a start and a finish. You schedule short renewals the way a runner plans water stations morning stretch, midday nourishment, mid-afternoon brief walk. You let these pauses become part of your method rather than a reward you earn. You prepare for friction without dread, an email that provokes, a traffic delay, a tool that fails. You decide to respond rather than react. You keep a phrase ready, steady and clear, and you return to it when your chest tightens. You also remember that energy rises when you align intention with action. You speak truth to hesitation. Discipline is not punishment. It is protection for sacred aims. You ask for moral fiber to do difficult things kindly. You picture strength with a face. It looks like patience in conversation, integrity in private decisions, generosity when outcomes tempt you to clutch. You choose to lift others, not just agendas. Answer messages with warmth. Acknowledge effort. Listen longer than you feel necessary. You learn the art of pacing your attention. 15 focused minutes, 2 minutes to breathe, 90 minutes of deep work, 10 minutes of movement. You adjust without self-accusation when realities shift. So Isaiah 4:31, you wait with expectancy and receive renewed vigor that outlasts urgency. You rise, not on fumes, but on promise. Your steps lengthen without strain because hope fuels endurance. You keep walking, and weariness loses its rule. When resistance arrives, and it will, you decide beforehand how you will proceed. If criticism comes, you sift it for truth and release the sting. If confusion crowds your mind, you simplify, write the next 2 actions on a page, and do the first. If fear of failure flares, you remind yourself that obedience matters more than optics and learning is not loss. You sustain your body because it is your instrument, water at the ready, nourishing food within reach, brief stretching to keep muscles responsive. You invite divine help into the moment you dread most, asking for clarity, skill, and a non-defensive posture. You keep your word where you have given it and let unnecessary commitments fall away without guilt. You end this planning with tenderness toward your humanity. You will not measure your value by completed boxes. You will measure faithfulness by presence, honesty, and care. You keep your gaze near the email in front of you, the voice across the call, the colleague who needs a blessing, the small repair that spares later trouble. You remember that firm steps do not require clenched fists. You keep your hands open, ready to serve, ready to receive guidance, ready to stop when the inner signal says pause. You leave the room with a composed rhythm, words prepared yet flexible, calendar marked yet breathable. And as your foot meets the threshold, you hear the refrain inside, not driven, directed, not pressured, purposed, not sprinting, steady. You walk into light with enough for now, and you will be given more as you go. You choose rhythms that honor soul and service. You begin to think of time as a garden, not a racetrack. You tend sections with care, pruning what overgrows and watering what needs attention, trusting that growth unfolds by seasons more than by sprints. You choose a humane tempo that matches your calling and current capacity. You practice transitions the way musicians honor rests, because spaces between notes give the melody shape. You set your morning stride by intention rather than alerts, a simple breath, a sentence of gratitude, a first action chosen for meaning, not noise. You place short markers in the day like stones across a stream so you know where to step next. You decide that constancy will carry more fruit than frenzy, and you let that quiet decision guide how you move from room to room. You now shape your hours with a cadence that respects concentration and renewal. You choose one deep work block when your mind is brightest, a lighter administrative window, and a margin for people who need presence. You schedule tiny pauses the way a walker seeks shade. 2 minutes to stand, sip water, or look at something green. You observe which activities drain and which energize, and you interleave them wisely. You keep a short list for today, 3 meaningful advancements and a handful of supporting tasks. You stop confusing fullness with faithfulness. You give priority to what aligns with your assignment and set aside what only imitates progress. You allow a single project to receive your best focus rather than scattering attention across too many fields. You let the small wins stack, and they begin to sing. You create gentle guardrails that protect this way of moving. You practice kind refusals that leave relationships intact. You appreciate being asked. You cannot take that on just now. You limit the windows when devices may intrude, using quiet modes during your most valuable work. You choose start and stop times and treat them like promises, not suggestions. You adopt a simple evening ritual that cues release. Tidy a surface, prepare clothes. Select tomorrow's first action, so morning opens without scramble. You decide what belongs daily, weekly, and occasionally, and you let that scaffold save you from constant redeciding. You remember that mastery is often a rhythm before it becomes a result. You build a pattern you can keep on ordinary days so that extraordinary days do not break you. You also calibrate to people rather than only projects. You listen for the speed of the person across from you and match it with respect. In conversation, you let empathy guide timing, a pause to let emotion settle, a reply that prioritizes clarity over volume. You notice which interruptions are assignments and which are distractions by asking a single question. Does this align with today's aim? You offer warmth generously and availability wisely. When expectations collide, you speak plainly and propose a step that honors both mission and health. You understand that collaboration has a tempo. You keep your heart soft and your boundaries clear. You discover that gentleness in communication actually accelerates trust, and trust becomes the highway where work moves freely. You treat your body as a partner in pacing. You nourish it early, keep water close, and move enough to keep energy fluid. You step outside if possible, find a ribbon of sky, and let sunlight reset your inner clock. You choose an unhurried walk between tasks when feasible, letting motion shake loose mental sediment. You hold your plan like an open palm, ready to receive fresh guidance. If a delay appears, you use it for a micro-practice gratitude, a few slow breaths, or a quiet blessing for someone on your mind. You recognize signs that the tempo is slipping. Shallow breathing, tightened shoulders, rushed words, and you correct gently rather than scolding yourself. You remember the banner over this day, not driven, directed. By midday, you begin to notice the fruit of this chosen stride: fewer spills, clearer choices, kinder speech, steadier courage. You carry this measured flow into the afternoon, adjusting without self-accusation as realities change. You mark the moment you will stop and the small ceremony that will close your work. Shut the laptop, place tools in order. Speak a thanks that turns the heart toward evening peace. You remember that a sustainable tempo is a gift to those around you because steadiness creates trust. You keep your steps even when others rush, and you let their urgency pass like wind while you continue along your lane of light. You walk the day at a speed that keeps love intact and service strong, and you find you can finish without collapse. Ready to rest, ready to rise again, you entrust outcomes and celebrate faithful progress. You pause at the threshold of action and devotion and turn the whole morning into a gift. You picture your work like a basket of first fruits, some ripe, some still budding, and you set it before God with open hands. You breathe, feel the light touch your face, hear birds stitching melody through the air, and you let gratitude become your posture. You acknowledge what has been done in honesty and what remains unfinished without shame. You remember that love, not pressure, is the measure. You say, all of this is yours, and peace grows where strain once rooted. You take inventory with kindness. You name a conversation handled with patience, a plan clarified, a burden released, a boundary honored, a moment of courage that kept you aligned. You give thanks for steady choices that rarely make headlines but build character like quiet stones. You bless the tasks that still wait, not as failures, but as tomorrow's invitation. You release the illusion that everything depends on your pace and welcome the truth that faithfulness multiplies in ways you cannot chart. You let the Spirit transform checklists into prayer, a record of love offered, not merely labor logged. The Proverbs 16:3, you commit your actions to the Lord and you rest from control. You trust that alignment matters more than acceleration. You place the fruit and the future in sovereign hands, and your heart settles. You make your offering tangible. You can stand, stretch, and open your palms as if placing each responsibility, name, and decision into a river of mercy. You whisper a blessing over colleagues, clients, neighbors, anyone touched by your work, and ask that goodness reach them in ways beyond your sight. You surrender optics, how you appear, how quickly others move, how loudly results speak. You choose integrity over image and devotion over display. You remember that progress is often a field of seedlings. Growth happens underground before anyone notices green. You celebrate fidelity to the next right step, knowing that consistency becomes strength. You also practice holy closure for this segment of the day. You set a time to pause and honor limits, trusting that rhythm protects calling. You craft a brief ritual to mark transition, tidy the surface, list the next 2 actions for later, speak a simple thanks. You resist replaying conversations by blessing the other person and then releasing the echo. You invite joy into small completions, an email sent with care, a room restored to order, a promise kept. You let delight become fuel, not just reward. You carry a sentence into the afternoon, offered, not gripped, trusted, not forced. Finally, you lift your gaze. You imagine the day as a path of light laid across water, shimmering but sure. You walk forward with a composed heart, not to impress, but to serve. You entrust results to the one who sees what you cannot and weaves what you bring into a story larger than your planning. You choose to be present, to listen, to adjust with grace. You bless your beginning and your end, knowing that both belong to God and that the space between them is where love does its quiet work. You step on, carried yet courageous, purpose held, pressure surrendered. Morning reflection. You wake to first light, breathe slowly, and remember who holds you. You choose a humane rhythm, receive strength for each action, and release hurry into kindness. You name one meaningful step to take, one person to encourage, and one burden to place on an inner altar. You commit outcomes to God and celebrate progress, however modest. You let sunlight, a small prayer, or a whispered thanks reset your attention. You walk with a calm center offered, not gripped, directed, not driven. You begin again, quietly brave, ready to love well today.